my HS 100 students. This is Professor Donald Collins. Thanks again for being part of this course and for starting this out with me. This is my maiden voyage with HS 100, although I have taught historical methods before and education methods and methods in Black Studies, which is very similar to history before, to upper level undergraduate students, to students getting master's degrees and PhDs in history and in education and so on. So I've taught grad students and upper level undergrads some of the stuff, people who are majoring in history. But this is a required course for all first year students. And there might be a few of you who are second year students who didn't, for whatever reason, didn't end up taking this class this first year. But in all likelihood, I don't think I've ever taught any of you before. So this is all of our maiden voyages together and encountering the past. It is what it is. This is a required course. I don't think that this is the best, the greatest way to introduce students to the field of history, but that's me, right? I can have my own opinion while still teaching the course anyway, and I'll teach it with, a good faith effort at least anyway. So there's that. But anyway, so today we're talking about the syllabus and what the syllabus entails. And for those of you who think that this is a long syllabus, it's actually not. This is about half the size of the syllabi that I've been doing for most of the last 15 years. My average size syllabus is somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 pages. They were creeping close to 18 to 20 in the last couple of years, and I realized that students weren't reading them anyway, so I cut them down to basic fundamentals. You don't read supplemental readings. I'll provide a list of those later on in the semester. I'll provide other materials later on in this week talking about etiquette in class and things of that nature. But today, for this segment, we are mostly concentrating on the contents within the syllabus. This is a combined syllabus because I teach two sections of HS 100 at 925 and 1025. The only difference between this syllabus, the one for 1025 or the one for 925 or 1050, is because of the fact that you meet at those times. That is literally the only difference. Everything else is the same. Otherwise, I would be doing everything twice, and I don't think I want to make duplicate work here. So that's why you have the two sections listed here. So anyway, I'm going through the course description, introduction, requirements, the objectives for the course, the requirements in terms of reading and in terms of assignments, your overall course schedule and what that schedule really entails, and then basically talk to you about plagiarism and the use of AI technologies within that. So first of all, what does this course description say? It says, why does history matter? In this day and age, I mean, as an academic historian, I can't really answer that question within the context of academic history, the thing that I'm trained to be able to do because I have a doctorate, because I'm a professor, because I've written for journals and those kinds of things over the years, right? I've done all of that. And, from a typical academic historian's perspective, at this stage in 2023, the answer is simply, I don't know, all right? But we'll talk about that more later. This is a general course description. I did not write this. I presume either my current department chair or the previous one, who's now the assistant dean for College of Arts and Sciences, wrote this at some point. But anyway, why does history matter? This course explores why the study of the past is essential for understanding our present. They should have added our future, but we'll get there. Through the lens of a single historical topic that varies by instructor, students are introduced to what it means to think like a historian and weave compelling stories. Learn how to think like a historian, weave compelling stories. You might be able to learn how to think like a historian, but to weave compelling stories in one semester, they're expecting a lot. Along the way, students learn to ask critical questions, to evaluate evidence, to make persuasive arguments, and to write clearly and cogently. This course introduces students to how and why histories are produced, but more than that, it sets out to provide new ways of thinking about the human experience, about our place in the world today, right? I think that last part is really what you're going to get and also the ability to ask critical questions and evaluate evidence. But making persuasive arguments, weaving compelling stories, there are historians who've been at this work for longer than I've been at it who can't weave compelling stories and make persuasive arguments. I mean, my goodness, they're expecting you to do a lot of this course. I don't have those level of expectations. I just want to introduce you to the world of an academic historian, a professional historian who's paid to think through the interpretation, to be able to take material and explain how and why things happen, why people do what they do. Groups of people, large groups of people over decades and generations and even centuries and things of that nature, right? And the case study that we're using, as you follow me scrolling down somewhat here, um, let me see if I can do this. Let's do that. There we go. We're talking primarily about black migration from 1910 roughly to today, right? And in this introduction, which is written by me, I say the following: migration from farms to cities and from one region to another has been a constant theme of American history and culture. But that there perhaps has been no group more transformative in and more transformed by the process of migration than African Americans. You could debate that somewhat. I'm pretty sure the 70% of indigenous Americans who live in cities would beg to differ. I'm pretty sure that there's some other groups who've been through a lot of tumult over the years who could say the same thing, but more or less it's probably true. The push and pull factors, the range of emotions, the psychological pressures millions of black Americans face in leaving their homes for not so bright lights of America's big cities across different regions of the U.S. began to change them in the nation starting in the 1910s. In the process, a largely rural southern population became largely urbanized of communities in every major city in the U.S. by the end of the 1960s, only to move again to suburbs, to the Sun Belt, and in recent decades to the urban South. With black migration, we will reach beyond the words origin or journey and destination, and the idea that migration has merely been a physical manifestation of a difficult and seemingly unending cultural and spiritual journey in the U.S. Considering migration, we also consider the cultural baggage of African Americans in the U.S., from racism and socioeconomic inequality to massive changes blacks wrought in music, literature, to arts and culinary as part of this process. In other words, how a group of people, millions of people, over time changed the way the nation ate, breathed, thought about life, worldview, world sense of things, sense of humanity, all of that over the course of 100 years. Now, in the process of doing that, I'm supposed to use this case study to teach you about different things, about why history matters, about the why methodology, history is opposed to what, and so on and so forth. So that's all part of what I'm trying to do and tell you about the syllabus and then telling you about this course, right? This is the case study, right? This version of Encountering the Past, that's at the top of page 2, will use black migrations to the U.S. as a case study for discussing and understanding how historians have found, used, and analyzed and interpreted evidence about black migration over the past century. It will also provide theoretical frameworks around which historians have worked on this and other related issues. The course is not black migration. The course is black migration in the context of teaching you all these other different things, to using this case study, something compelling to get you through to get through these course objectives, which come right after the course introduction, right? So at the end of the course, the student will be able to understand what history is and what history is not. I'm going to spend some time on this in the second class of week 1. So that you really do understand what it is and what it isn't. Have a deeper understanding of black and other groups of color migration to/within the U.S. since 1910. Since not all black people were born in the U.S., some people were born in Africa, some people were born in parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. So there you go. Understand the evolution of historical analysis and methodologies, otherwise known as the how and why approach to history, to begin to think like historians. And the word "to begin to think like historians," that whole phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I don't expect you to be historians by the end of the semester, but I do think that you need to think a bit more methodologically like us. like historians, to be able to ask lots of why and how questions and not just what happened, right? Recognize a variety of ways in which historians approach, analyze, and interpret the past with an introduction to historiography within that, um, and how it relates to the present slash future. And I think that historians always try to err on the side of let's stick with the present, let's not talk about the future. But it's kind of hard, given the day and age that we live, to not at least foreshadow what might be happening based on human behaviors from the past. You can do that, right? You can predict that humans will be imperfect in the future. That's not a hard prediction, right? Exactly how, what ways will we screw things up? I don't know. No historian's going to know that. But we know that we're going to screw up some things because of the way we've screwed up things in the past and in our present. So keep that in mind. Recognize the variety, develop critical thinking and analytical skills. This is a standard thing that all academicians, all professors expect their students to be able to do, right? I think to begin to develop is really a more appropriate way of putting this. And we will spend a lot of time asking good historical questions because that's the main thing that you should come out of this is that it's not so much about having answers, it's about having good questions, well-honed scalpel-like questions made of obsidian glass scalpel type of questions, the kind of questions that are sharp and penetrative and that allow you to really deepen your knowledge and deepen your understanding of knowledge of the historical. And then sense how history is an ever-changing, meaning not static field because of new knowledge. You might gain new knowledge because you interviewed people who hadn't been interviewed before. You looked at the letters of people who'd never been looked at before, right? And new ways of interpreting such knowledge come to light. Maybe using critical race theory, like the actual critical race theory, not what politicians call critical race theory, to actually understand black migration, for instance. That could be one example. So, yeah. So that's your objectives. That's the course in a nutshell. Your reading list. Your required readings underneath this says see the course schedule below for links and dates for required readings, Moodle for downloads, articles assigned. There is no assigned textbook or book for this course. It's all articles or film or some multimedia thing that you might be taking a look at, but there's no book assigned for this course. So for all intents and purposes, you're getting free courseware throughout the course from articles that I've gathered, excerpts from books that I'm using, from links that are provided in the course schedule for you to get to. So you can use those. Yeah, no required readings. You have required readings, but no money to spend on books. Isn't that great? It's wonderful, right? So the main thing I want to spend a little bit more time on are the 4 criteria that will be used in determining your grade for this course, right? Active participation, that's basically toward page 2 or 3. I think this is page 2 still, right? Active participation is a quarter of your grade, meaning that the highest grade you can get if you decide not to show up the rest of the semester is a C. And I don't know anyone who can get 100 on everything else in the course and still end up with a C. So more than likely, you're talking a D or lower. So you really need not just to show up, but to participate, right? And we're going to be doing a lot of discussion in this course. This course was originally designed seminar style. For those of you who are not familiar with seminar style, it's when we expect students to show up for class, having done the assigned readings prior to coming to class, and to be able to have a cogent discussion on it for upwards of an hour and 15 minutes at a time, without me doing much more than giving maybe a 10-minute overview of what we're going to talk about for the day. That's seminar style. That's not what I expect in this course. I will be lecturing, but there will still be a lot of discussion because we will be doing a lot of stuff that helps lend itself to discussion, including reading, but not just. And so in order to discuss, you need to be in class, which is why attendance is kind of important. Just a little bit more than kind of. But if you look at what I have in blue, keeping in mind that, yes, there's still a pandemic technically going on, that we might not be in the emergency phase of a pandemic, but people are still getting sick and people are still dying from COVID. So, and that's happening all over the world. Last I checked, that's still a pandemic. you know, and given the fact that it's not just there, there's a normal rolling of things that happen in a semester where people get sick from mononucleosis and strep throat and the flu and RSV and whatever else is out there, monkeypox, mpox, whatever they're calling it these days. A million other things that happen to students over the course of a semester to keep them from participating. So if you are, if you're just missing a class here or a class there for whatever reason, upwards of 7 classes over the course of the semester, which is a quarter of the classes you're supposed to attend, don't send me an email for a random day you're out because you're getting your teeth cleaned or because you went to a concert the night before and you can't make it to class the next morning because you're hungover. I don't care. I really don't. So if you just mean to miss a class, fine. If you're missing more than one class, if you've missed more than 7 classes over the course of the semester, if you're sick, if you're having you need an intervention for whatever reason, those are the kinds of things you should be sending me emails about. Not the random one day here or one day there. It is your responsibility as an young adult student to be able to let me know when you need help. It's also a responsibility to let me know when you can't be in the class, multiple classes. Shoot, I missed, with a standard undergraduate class, I probably missed 1 out of every 4 classes over the course of the semester myself. I didn't email my professor every time I wanted to miss class because I wanted to hang out with friends or I didn't feel like being in class that particular day. Missed 1 out of 4 and I made the rest. That seemed good enough to me. At least the classes I didn't like. Something probably not quite this similar from this situation. So just let me know when you really need to when you got issues that are going to keep you out from multiple classes, when you've got issues that are going to keep you out so much that you're going to miss more than 7 classes. Those are the kinds of things you need to let me know. Otherwise, I expect to see you. So anyway, there's also a bookend assignment that bookends the course. What is and what isn't history? You've got one that's due the very first week, due at the end of the first week, which is September the 10th. You got one due at the end of the semester, which is December the 10th. This first one is a pretty much a gimme. You're writing 2 to 3 pages about what you think is and what you think is not history. And you're going to give examples of how you think that on the basis of your prior learning, prior experience, prior knowledge, not on the basis of anything that happens in this course. Not for the first part of this, the week 1 version of this assignment. You're telling me essentially what you personally think history is and isn't. And you're writing 2 to 3 pages on it. As long as you do spell check and grammar check, this should be a gimme. This should be a pretty easy A. All right. I'm not expecting you to be erudite or be able to, go into great extraneous detail about what history is or isn't like an academic historian. That's not my expectation. If you do, that's great, but that's not my expectation. For the one that you do at the end of the semester, you are supposed to bring to bear what you have learned over the course of the semester in that what is and what isn't history essay the second time around. Particularly concentrate on the things that you learned over the course of 14, 15 weeks, meaning that you have to be reflective, meaning that you have to, show evidence and that sort of thing. So, all assignments in this course are due Sunday evenings by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard or Eastern Daylight Time. So there's that. And there are consequences if you miss deadlines without extensions. So it's right there. You have a small group writing assignment where there's a first draft that's due week 5 and a final draft that's due week 7. It's 20% of your grade. And this assignment is a group assignment where students will meet in groups of 3 and 4, and you will sit down and work out in this assignment key questions that have not been addressed regarding either the work of an academic historian or around the Black migration experience. Questions that that are good historical questions to ask, right? I'm not going to give you a direct example because we'll spend time talking about this, but I'll give you an example of the kinds of things that you could ask. On another topic, let's just take second wave feminism, and how radical was second wave feminism compared to third wave, fourth wave feminism. That's a good question to ask, given the fact that second wave feminism is primarily made up of or led by middle class and affluent white women, right? They tend to use women as universal, but really the people who are the bulwarks of second wave feminism are middle class and affluent white women who took advantage of the times to basically get into the workforce and fight for reproductive rights, but they were really fighting for that group, but not for all women. Poor white women tended to be excluded from this conversation. Black women and other women of color seem to be excluded from this conversation. Those kinds of things. And so when you're asking questions about holes in the historiography, holes in the historical literature around Black migration, or holes in terms of historical methodology not being practiced in terms of understanding Black migration, or holes in the kinds of questions that academic historians didn't ask in looking at Black migration and other forms of migration in the U.S. So, those are the kinds of things I want you to be thinking about. Where are the holes in the literature, the holes in the historiography, the holes in, talking about the experience of being a professional historian? And you're going to be doing that in groups, putting down questions, showing evidence as to why this is a good question and where the holes are within the literature or literatures that you have up through week 5 or week 7. Those also are due on Sundays, October the 8th and October the 22nd, respectively. And then finally, you have a freestyle artifact assignment that is 35% of your total grade, 10% on the project proposal, and then you have 25% for the final project itself. This is a video or a multimedia project that you ultimately are providing for the class to take a look at. And in this course, that means using a historical artifact that either is part of the experience of migrants within a group of migrants within the U.S., or harkens back to that experience. Could be music, could be art, could be literature, could be a map, could be a building, could be a community, could be anything, right? It could be in terms of artifact. This could be an individual project, can also be a group project. It can also be very creative. You could do podcasts. You could write rap lyrics. You could do whatever, right? I'm just trying to give you the opportunity to express yourself in a way that's different than just simply, hey, write a final paper. Hey, let's do a final exam. This class doesn't really lend itself to a final exam, unless I want you to use primary documents. In this case, you are using primary documents. Artifacts are, in fact, for the most part, primary documents. Some of them are secondary documents. We'll talk about that more in the second half of the semester. The final project is due the week before the last week of the regular season known as the fall semester or spring semester. So before the playoffs of final exam weeks begin, right? So it's due then. We'll talk about this more again in the second half of the semester. And then the last thing I want to leave you off with is, it's 2 things. One is I'm going all the way down to the bottom of the syllabus, so around page 6 or so. I think this is 6. Yeah, this is it's page 5 or so. That right after I show you all this stuff about plagiarism and cheating on here. It's the course schedule. Your due dates, so the assignments that are due on certain due dates are in red and in bold, right? I made a point of doing that so that you would actually see them. Stuff that you can download easily through links have links to them. Those that don't have links to them or say TBD are things that are going to need to look up in Moodle. But this course schedule goes over all the different things we're doing week by week. There is a lot of video in this class because I want to make sure that you get stuff and it's not just me lecturing on it. And this class does not lend itself to a lot of lecturing anyway. So there's that. So there will be a lot of audiovisual kinds of materials to hopefully grab your attention, or at least get you to think through what, the case study, and what through that case study understand how historians really think about their work, and think and gather evidence for their interpretations and how they interpret things, and so on and so forth. So, and then last thing, academic dishonesty, submission of original work. By it's pretty clear that plagiarism is a form of cheating. It's just cheating. You're basically using someone else's words as your own. But now that we have this thing known as GPT, and versions of it where you can actually have a bot, AI algorithms, basically, plug in a bunch of keywords, and they can search for those keywords and basically throw a word salad of things related to those keywords together that might read as a halfway decent essay. Students have been using these things in large numbers. I have not specifically addressed it in the syllabus because no one knows exactly how to address all this. So I'm going to address it this way. If you are planning on using ChatGPT in order to, make your life easier, my first suggestion obviously is not, but if you are really going to do it, whether as an individual or as a group, you are strongly urged, in fact, you are required in my class to actually cite it as a source. I want you to cite it as a source. I want you to list at the end of your paper or end of whatever essays you have to write for this course, works cited page, and better say ChatGPT in there as one of your sources if you are in fact using it. Because it will be a great way to show how this thing doesn't really work in terms of writing good, solid essays or good, solid evidence and interpretation and arguments, and also stuff that kind of, grabs you, makes you feel stuff, makes you feel, good about yourself, makes you feel kind of guilty because of the way society is headed, that kind of thing. People can write that way. You don't just throw words down on the paper and hope that I have any effect on people. I write for a living. I want people to be angry sometimes. I want people to be sorrowful sometimes. I want people to be energized sometimes, right? And if they're none of those things, then why the heck am I writing? ChatGPT does not deal with any of that, right? Even the idea of doing a persuasive argument, right? That sort of thing. So if you really plan on using it, if you really want to do a questions paper essay, a group essay where you use ChatGPT, go right ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it, as long as you cite the source. You will not be penalized for it. Now you're probably going to lose points because it's not the level of clarity and analysis and quality of words that you really needed to tell your story or make your argument won't be there. But at least you're not going to get a 0 for cheating. So, because you already know, I'm already counting for it. I might have a better policy next semester, but for now, that's my policy as far as that's concerned. Anyway, that's it on the syllabus and those things I really needed to cover regarding the syllabus. We can talk more about it at a later date. We can talk about classroom etiquette later on in this week and other things later on this semester, but that's it for now.